For our last of our 4 dialogue sessions, we plan to inform our strategic plan and help us on our way for the next 4 years. I'm delighted to serve as president here, and we have a distinguished panel and facilitator here today to help us respond to the question of how is our community changing and what we ought to do as an institution to respond to those changes. I'm glad to have Dr. Marwick return, recently retired provost, to help us facilitate this session today. She was integral in our Nexus, Northwest Educational Council for Student Success, getting that started and getting some real regional approaches, working with our 3 sender districts, and we have one of our superintendents today. I'll have her introduce our panelists today, but I'm glad that she's here to help us facilitate the session today. So please be sure the second half you have an opportunity to ask questions. Use the cards that are there. You can hand that to one of our strategic planning and accountability team members. They've been doing a phenomenal job capturing your thoughts, not only in these sessions, but also getting the feedback, using the white paper that will be written for this session, the ones that were written for the others, and theming those so that we can actually have some themes to respond to. Thanks for the lights. And so there are mics for you to ask questions. If you don't want to verbally ask a question, you can submit a card. And of course, for those who aren't attending today, please encourage your peers to look at the video that will be placed online and use the online feedback form. All of you are welcome to do that as well. We need you to give us your feedback so that we can respond to that accordingly. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Marwick. And I look forward to this discussion today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Proctor. I am so pleased to be here today. It's great to come to work once every 3 months. And for those of you who do not know me, although I think I know most of you in the room, I retired as provost at Harper College on June 30th, as Dr. Proctor said. So I'm really excited to be here with you today as we talk about our community. We have our distinguished panelists. And as we think about giving input for Harper College's next strategic plan to develop the direction for the college in the coming years. So thank you for taking the time and being here. This is the 4th dialogue session, and it is the final one. We have questions for our panelists. You will be able to ask questions at the end, and you will have an opportunity through an online survey to give additional input that you think of. Before we get started, let's just review some data points. Maybe. All right. Is it turned off? Orlando, can we do the slides? Can you help? Ah, there we go. If I turn it on, it works so much better. Thank you. So this is the 2005-2006 school year. And this pattern, many of you have seen it before, is Harper College's district. All of the dots on the map show where students are eligible for free and reduced lunch. And this is in 2005 and 2006. The red dots show where more than 50% of the students in that school are eligible for free and reduced lunch. Let's look at a more up-to-date map. As you can see, in the 2015-16 school year, there are 23 red dots, as opposed to the 3 red dots that were there in 2005-2006. This is representative of our changing community. And Harper, as the community's college, needs to keep these data points in mind as we develop our next strategic plan to be sure we're meeting the educational needs of the community. Our demographics are changing as well. You have 2006 credit students and 2018 credit students. You may notice the difference in pattern. Specifically, we're increasing the population of students that are Hispanic Latino in a significant numbers. Local unemployment. Well, unemployment isn't bad right now across the country. We're coming out of the recession from 2008. However, unemployment remains higher if you do not have an education. It's 10% if you only have a high school diploma, and it's 7% if you only have some college. High-quality degrees make a difference in people's lives. Your voice is important. Today, we have a distinguished panel here with us of our community members. These people represent a wide array. You have biographies for them on the back of your sheet, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves with just a few sentences. Then we'll get on with some prepared questions, and I'm going to leave about 40 minutes at the end for your questions. As you think of them, jot them down on your card. You will be able to ask them yourself, or if you just want to write it on the card and have somebody else ask the question, at the end, you'll raise your card and we'll just collect them. So without further ado, Dr. Cates, would you like to begin with an introduction?
Sure. Good morning. My name is Dan Cates, and I'm the superintendent in District 211, right across the street. It is very common that I look across and see you all arriving and leaving, and students, and certainly a lot of tennis players out there. The history that I have in this community, I've lived in District 211 for my entire 27 years that I've served District 211. Right outside my house, a District 15 bus stops and a District 211 bus stops. Like I say, I've lived here the entire time. I began my career as a psychologist, moved into administration, and for the last, this is my 6th year as superintendent. I have talked to our other 2 primary superintendents, and so we're very pleased to be a part of the conversation and for you to include our voices this morning.
Hi, I'm Kathy Gilmer. I'm retired from NIU, but I also worked here at Harper for a few years as well. I've lived in the northwest suburbs for about 40 years. My children graduated from District 15 and District 211 schools, and I've been involved in many community organizations over this time, and as well as on the board of the Foundation for Harper College. So I'm very interested in hearing your input as we look to the future, and to hear what all of us here have to say, but also your questions. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Kathy Millen, and born and raised in Mount Prospect, and went to school at University of Iowa, and chose to come back, as so many of the young people that I work with, to this area to work. I started teaching in District 211. My first jobs at Conant and Fremd High School, and then when I decided to have a family, I looked to see what else I could do with my education degree, and was brought to Harper College. And so I've been here for almost 31 years teaching in the adult education department. So my roots are here in the northwest suburbs. As much as my husband wants to move out of the state in Illinois, I see myself staying here for many reasons that we'll probably talk about today. Raised my family here, and I'm happy to be here with my distinguished partners today.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Steve Skogna. I'm the president and CEO of Northwest Community Healthcare. And this is a privilege for me, as we've been working with Harper for a number of years on a number of different dynamics that are really very different, I think, than most communities have the opportunity to see education and healthcare come together. So the focal point that I hope to bring today is sort of that unique partnership. When you look across the country, you see that education as well as healthcare are 2 of the principal providers of services. They're both focused on the needs of the community, whether it's providing that education or providing that health care. And there's so many similarities that we think we can advantage our respective communities with it. To participate in this dialogue today really means a great deal to me. So I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You may notice that Dr. Craig Mackey, CEO of Asian Human Services, was also going to be with us today, but regretfully he had to cancel at the last minute because an unavoidable circumstance came up. We're happy to have all of you panelists here today. Certainly, I know that you have all been involved with the college and you all represent very important entities in the community. So I'd like to start out by asking you, what do you believe are the 2 to 3 most important characteristics that define our community today? And also, if you could comment on how this is different than perhaps 5 to 10 years ago, you would have answered that question. Who would like to start?
Well,
Steve?
I will start. I don't know if I would like to, but I'll start. I think there's a couple of key areas. First and foremost, as the map showed, there's a significant amount of change in the need of our communities. While we are in the suburbs, quote unquote, it does not necessarily mean that we are all in a situation where we're able to achieve everything that we really need in order to provide for our families and for our community's well-being. So that change really precipitates a lot of responsibility on organizations such as Harper. We really have to prepare all of our community members and be in a position where we can affect change for them so that they are better prepared. And so I do think it's a bigger challenge than it was 5 to 10 years ago as it relates to just the economic circumstances, but also you feel the undercurrent of change, and what change can do to a community can be significant. It provides for a lot of questions, a lot of instability, and really it's very, very difficult, I think, for organizations, let alone individuals, to look down the road 5 to 10 years and have a better understanding or have a good understanding as to what not only the organizations need to do for that community, but also what do people, young people coming out, what do they need to do in order to be prepared for that future? And I do believe that today, more so than 5 to 10 years ago, that instability or that uncertainty, because of all the unrest and all the changes that have been occurring, is at a much greater level and creating a greater level of anxiety for the people of our community and also, obviously, for the children that are coming up. So I would see those as probably 2 of the areas.
Thank you. Kathy?
And I think, kind of
We have 2
continuing.
Kathys.
Yes.
Kathy Millen.
I think kind of carrying on to what Steve had said, what I see, again, being raised in this area, I see the concern and the anxiety with not only our young people, our young high school students, of which I work closely with, but also in their parents. And their concern of safety, their concern of finding employment that is stable, that they can't afford the dream of buying a home in this community. When I look back 5 or 6 years ago, people were looking to stay here and buy their first home here in the Northwest suburbs. And now they're looking to move out because they feel like they can't afford the American dream to live here and have a home and find a job. So this is concerning. The level of anxiety that I see on a day-to-day basis with our young people, with affording health care, with being able to afford school, with being able to know if they're going to have a home when they leave school that day, if they'll be evicted. This is the constant that I see, and I'm concerned about the future for our adults, but I'm also confident that we're going to figure this out. More and more and more of the adults that I'm working with are looking to Harper for the certificate programs, for one. Can I find a job that offers me a living wage? Moms are now working Maybe before they were staying home, and now we're looking at if mom goes back to work, who's watching the children? So affordable childcare, all-day kindergarten. These are all of the questions that our families are looking for to stay in this town. We want them to stay here. We want them to look to Palatine and Schaumburg and Hoffman and Arlington as their home, and they want to stay here. We don't want them to move on, but in order to keep these families here, we need to be able to look at their needs, which are affordable education, which are jobs, providing living wages, and affordable housing. These are the areas that I see really impacting our families right now, and things that we should be addressing.
Kathy Gilmore.
Yes. From an education point of view or an employment point of view, I think that the increasing changes and uncertainty really need to be addressed even more so in our community than they did several years ago. With the economic insecurity, really, and food insecurity that we see, and concerns about jobs for the future, both for our students and for those who are currently working, there's a lot of hidden unemployment or underemployment in the community, and people worried about their jobs for the future, and a concern about how to be able to change what they're doing to meet this ever-changing economy, and not really knowing where to turn. And at the same time, people are stretched for more time, and nationally education is becoming even more expensive. And so you get this time where there are fewer family resources and dollars and time to meet the education needs at the same time that the costs are increasing. So I think that affordability and access to education to help people meet these challenges is going to be even a greater concern than it has been in the last 5 to 10 years. So we need to be able to have programs that are affordable so people can change careers and develop the skills that they need in order to have a more certain future.
Dr. Cates.
Certainly would agree with all of those comments. I would add that in our schools and across the 3 high school districts that we work primarily in partnership here through Nexus, our programming now is very aligned in order to create students on career pathways. So this notion of students will figure it out, we have tried to dispel that. Of course, we foster that. We want to allow students plenty of room to change their career pathway, to discover what is not fitting to them. They'll be the first ones to tell you, yes, it's beneficial for me to know that I don't want to do X before I go and pay for a college year or 2 in the wrong direction. But I would add that all of those attributes we just heard are true, and at the same time, our families and our students are keyed up within our training to look for what is next. This notion of this ambiguous next that is undefined, we are doing all we can to break that down. And I would add that with the Harper Promise, what you will begin to see here is that many opportunities for students to enter here will be coming in with little historical college background, the first-timers, if you will. These are students that are going to now have doorways and runways into your classrooms, into your campus. And we are very mindful of that. We hope that they all come here with a defined college pathway, with a career pathway, and with having experienced some kind of experience out there. So the one call that I'm going to request throughout the course of this is to say, this notion of when they get there, they will get there, meaning completion, I do think it is helpful for us to say, well, why can't we help define a timeline? What if we were to say, this is a timeline by which we want them to complete? Here is your timeline by which we are hoping you will complete. It is a outward report card measuring stick for us that we report our graduation rates. It is helpful to have that as the target. That is what drives our report card standings, and I would extend an invitation that we are going to be sending you more and more students who have those needs that we just heard about and described from families who might not have been through the college doorway yet. And our solicitation is a partnership so that we can help them make that transition as successfully as possible, that everyone be informed about how those rates are going, and that we work together to say, where do we capture the rates when they fall?
Thank you. So we've outlined some issues. I've heard repeatedly socioeconomic issues. I've also heard uncertainty. Dr. Cates, you spoke a little bit about addressing both of those issues for our high school population with the alignment that you spoke of and also the Harper Promise program. How do you think we should continue to work, the college should continue to work with that high school population to continue to address those issues?
The bad, if I could use this term, the bad smack out there, right, on Harper is that, well, if I have to, I'll go to Harper. And I have to tell you that that is, we do all that we can to dispel that. That is not a helpful mentality. This is a wonderful institution with highly, highly successful opportunities for our students. But when our students come here, and I'm going to compare it to when our students start to come here from 8th grade. We had our our high school entrance tests last weekend. It's not even November, right? And so our in-reach into our incoming students begins in October. And I would offer that these are students who don't know the timelines, they don't know the sequence, they would benefit from, and they are thirsty for, and these families are thirsty for, the outreach. We begin with our parent nights early in the school year, throughout the second semester, so that students and families are familiar with where they need to go, what they need to connect with, what they need to bring. And despite the fact that they are 18 or sometimes older, these students are kids and they haven't been here before. So when we do our articulation programs, that is a key central arena where we can do better with our trips over here, but we can also enlist more help for people from your teams to come into our schools and connect with our students on a personal level. Those are direct ways that happen. Certainly what we know of when we track students who run into simply life circumstances. There's a volunteer group who excel beyond 211, and that's our Project Excel program. It captures those students who have come from impoverished homes and who are aspiring to get into our advanced placement classes and into college. The simple life that comes at these families and these kids is enough to overwhelm anybody. And when they don't have the resources, when they don't have the resilience built up yet, when they aren't familiar with it, it's easy to turn an uncomfortable eye. It is less problematic. Our first year supports, our checking in with the kids who we know are first timers, our active in-reach into their lives is a simple reality that if we don't emphasize that, we will be missing opportunities. They continue to need help after the point where we get them ready for your doorway. And both of us can do better. I give you our word on that.
Thank you. So you've really pointed out some good ways that we can continue and even better interact with our students coming out of high school. Harper also has a lot of adult students who are here who didn't go to college right out of high school, or quite often got a few college credits and then life took over. And they may want to come back to Harper so that they can get a better job and not know how to do it. I ask the rest of you if you will comment on how should we work together with the community to address the challenges and leverage our resources to meet the needs of all, educational needs of all of the people in our community. Kathy Gilmore, would you like to start?
Yes, I would. I think there are some ways that we can and do a better job in transitioning students, but also in supporting the adults in the community. We need to develop stackable programs that are laid out, and there are completion lines, as you had said, some timelines, some ways that these careers will kind of stack together, so that I know we talked about this a long time ago as a continuum of education, so that they can begin a program, and if they do need to take some time off to work then and support their family, they have completed part of it, and they know that they can get on this education train or timeline again when it's easier for them to find the resources of their time. And then in addition to that, as they're doing that, to have more apprenticeships and internships so that students are in the community and working, especially the apprenticeships where they work full-time and they get full benefits from their employer, but then they also go to college part-time, so they can continue to work, but also to improve their skills. I know that the college has many of those now in health careers, in the supply chain and manufacturing, HVAC, I guess insurance and banking and graphic design as well. I may have missed a few. I got my list this morning from Laura to talk about what those apprenticeships are, but I know that we need more in the healthcare industry, definitely, because there are so many positions that are open and new careers that are coming to the fore, and I think that we really need to work very closely with our area employers to find out what their needs are, what kind of skills they need, and their employment needs, so that we can make sure that our students are employed while they are working and going to school at the same time, or that they have a job afterwards. And I know that's even more important than before. Over 50% of Harper students identify as first generation. They don't have the college experience in their homes, and many mentors perhaps, and so that's why Beyond 211 is so important. So those types of things, maybe even some more on-demand or online education opportunities, so that our students have more access to education when and where they need it. So those are the types of things that I see that are important, and all of those need to be done in partnership with our area employers and our high schools to make sure that our students have the support that they need.
Kathy Millen, would you like to add to that?
Sure, I'd like to add to that. When I think of the work that we do at POC, it's the job I have every day is to reduce barriers. Reduce barriers, whether that be language, transportation, health. The list is many for a person that does reside in poverty. And at Harper College has been a partner serving on our board of directors for 25 years. We're celebrating our 25th year anniversary. But one of the things I still see is the importance, and it's increasing, the importance of marketing what Harper has to offer, and reducing the barriers of transportation. So Harper does that in many ways. At the center that I work, Harper provides citizenship, adult employment skills, GED, and ESL. Well, adults in the community know about that, but there's many that we're missing. We're missing those individuals that have just moved into apartment complexes. We're missing a lot of people. There's many adults out there in the community that need the resources Harper has, whether it be English as a second language or citizenship or GED, but they do not really know that it's available to them. I can't emphasize the importance of marketing, and for us to get out into the community and bring this information to the parents. And when I work with our high school students, it is very often that I'll look out and I'll say, how can I help you? And they'll say, help my mom, help my dad. And I'll give the information of Harper to them. It's one of my jobs. But we as Harper staff, and I put myself in that place, we need to be able to be on our feet. We need to go out there and be the foot soldiers of this institution and letting people know that it is available to you and you can do it and you can be successful, as Dr. Cates outlined that plan. The list of positions we need are great, whether it be navigators, whether it be transition coordinators. We just need more representatives from Harper out in the community talking and being available. And I'll see the students graduate from 211, and they'll say, yes, I'm going to Harper, but then maybe it's October or November and they haven't made that goal, for whatever reason it may be, and they don't know what the next step is. To be able to have individuals from this institution out in the community saying, here I am, come talk to me. My goal is to bring you to this campus, but maybe we start with being out in the apartment complexes, out in places like POC and LCC. Those are really important to bring the resources of this great institution out into the community in the hopes that eventually they come here. So we can't, but I think of the 6 staff I have right now that are young staff. Every one of them goes to Harper. They wear their Harper clothing when they're teaching our young students and I compete in summer camp. They are models of the work that this institution can do, but we need more of those young people employed in our programs that are working with the underserved.
Steve Scogna, the Northwest Community Hospital has certainly leveraged its resources with Harper, as evidenced through our new healthcare center. What's next, and how should we help?
Yeah, it's a great question because at Northwest Community, the Harper flag flies high in terms of the number of folks that have worked at NCH and have been a part of Harper is really, really significant, but it's nowhere close to where we believe that it could be and should be. And so our foundation, and we've been working with Harper and also with the districts to begin to establish career paths where students understand during high school that there is a path that can be taken that can get them into an employed situation, such as an apprentice kind of a role, but at the same time continue that education if they have that uncertainty as to where do they want to go and what do they want to do. Healthcare really offers a broad array of opportunities, and not all of them are medically and technically challenging, but what is imperative is that from our perspective, our employees fully have an understanding as to their importance. I have the privilege of addressing each orientation class that comes into Northwest Community, and I talk for about 40 minutes, but I tell them there's about 5 minutes that they really have to stay awake for. And that 5-minute component is that we deal with people who are really in one of the worst stages of their lives because they are threatened in some way, shape, or form. And it doesn't mean that the caregiver is the responsible party, but rather we as an entity, we as a community base are responsible for assisting that patient and their family through what is one of the more difficult times in their lives. So we want employees that are engaged. We want employees that have a path. We want employees that want to learn and want to grow. And that correlation with programs that we have offered, and I think we can expand to offer more through Harper, really dovetails directly into what we are all about. And that's why there's been that similarity or that symmetry between Harper and with Northwest Community, is that, we really are here for the benefit of the community, whether it's health, whether it's education, but it's getting to the point where it's not easy to really separate those two, because they are very much intertwined. And the more we can do, the more we can help our community grow from an educational perspective and remain healthy from a health perspective on a go-forward basis. So hopefully.
Thank you. So I'm hearing that Harper's doing a good job, but we need to do more. We need to do more with our employers. We need to do more with our high school students. We need to do more with our families, particularly our first generation. So given the need to do more, as we develop our next strategic plan, could you all name one issue that you think is most important to be addressed in that plan? Dr. Cates, would you like to go first?
Sure. I'm going to be somewhat repetitive on this. If our incoming students and families know of the completion and successful transfer rates, this is both the target and the advertisement. There are excellent improvements that have been made with our connections to Northern Illinois University. We already know about the University of Illinois. Those runways that have been set in motion for the degree in 3, that is your best commercial. That is our best commercial for students who can locally access opportunities at any level for what is going to be their ultimate destination. And at the same time, for those transitions that are not successful, that becomes everyone's shared work. It is, I recognize, I had, the young person who lived next to me in college, he didn't walk across the stage when I did. We're all adults in that regard, but I want to tell you, these first-time kids and many of the kids who are coming here, they didn't start anywhere except, at home plate. They didn't get to start at first or second or third base. That becomes our target. That becomes our best advertisement in terms of what is possible and what happens from here. Kathy described those students who are the models for the kids nearby. That's exactly where I think, all need to build upon. It is our completion rates, our successful transfer rates.
So perhaps better communication of what we really do well in a way that the people that need it can hear it. And to do more with that.
It is an external highlight and an internal call to arms.
Indeed. Steve Scogno, you want to go next?
Sure. I think one of the critical elements from my perspective deals with communication, but it deals with communication and with partnership with the employers in the marketplace along with Harper. I think there's a lot of education that students need to understand what the opportunities are that are out there. In my dialogue with young children, I have a 16-year-old going on about 38 at this point. And while many times, it's hard to have the dialogue, I'm fortunate in that, he and I do have the opportunity to talk a lot. And it's apparent that the world of opportunity while in high school it is very limited in their knowledge as to what is out there and how fast they have to make a decision and how much pressure they feel to make a decision very quickly. And so the more that we can work, in my opinion, as employers in the market with Harper to develop runways for these people to continue to be educated, continue to get a greater level of foundation of what working really is all about and to get a sense for what they want to do and where they want to do it, I think the better off the community will be, and candidly, the better off that our employers will be. Again, I truly believe this is a win-win situation.
Certainly, thank you, because education is a public good as well as a private good. Kathy Millen?
And I feel, I'm listening to what Dr. Cates said about the high school students and then about the businesses, and these are very, very important. And I'll think about something that Laura Brown said when she served on my board way back in the day, the importance of bringing not the students here the first time in high school, but bringing them here when they're in first grade and second grade. So we bring our summer camps here. We expose the children early. Exposing the children is so important. But I have to emphasize the importance of their parents. And when I ask our kids that succeed, and I talk to them all the time, it always will come back to my mother or my father. And so if we can strengthen that family unit, if we can help that child help their parents, and by that it means giving this child the parents the information. How do we do that? That's something that I do every day, and I need to do it better, and we all need to work together better on that. But it's strengthening the parents and that family. Those children will then do better, and I feel like those children will then feel like they can afford to come here. They'll understand it. It's starting that education early. It's starting that education of that parent of what Harper can do for them when that child is in preschool. Those parents need that information right then. They need to know that this is available to them, it's important to them, and they are their child's first teacher. So we need to help those parents be their child's first teacher by educating them.
Thank you. Kathy Gilmore, would you like to
Yes,
add?
all of these issues are so important, and I think that what brings it together and the challenge that I have to Harper as we move forward is to continue to develop the partnerships and new partnerships that we already have, because Harper cannot determine its future on its own. We're not a silo. We never have been. We're part of the community, and we have, I think, recognized that better than most educational institutions, whether they're community college or larger educational institutions. I mean, the building of M Building and the partnerships that went together to refurbish that and to bring it to a community resource for not only the college and the students, but for everyone. Working with the school districts and the employers to bring together the Promise program, which is a wonderful achievement, which will change lives. Those are things that are very unusual. And even working with the businesses to develop the internships and apprentice programs that we have now. We have, and I've been here, worked with the college, we've got 20, 25 years of really good track record of working together in the community to recognize and solve problems together. So I think that is Harper's greatest strength. But it also has got to be built upon and improved even more if we can solve and try to start addressing some of the concerns with our community that make it possible for our students to come here, whether they're high school students or adults that are returning because they know they need new skills. Those are the kinds of things that I think are important, and the partnerships are what's going to solve and start to address these issues.
Thank you. So one of the things you mentioned is what you think is Harper's greatest strength. So let me ask each of you, and I'll start with you, Kathy Gilmore. If you had to give Harper a grade today, we're an educational institution, we like grades. What would that grade be based on overall quality? And in one or two sentences, what do you each think is Harper's greatest strength? And also, what do you think is the greatest challenge that we have as we look at the future? Kathy, you mentioned the greatest strength being our working with the community. Mm-hmm. Give us a grade and then tell us what you think the greatest challenge is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess I'm kind of partial. Maybe I'll give us a B.
Okay.
Because I know there are things that we need to do better. But as a member of the foundation, what I hear are the success stories. And so I'm sure that there are some others and I know that there are many others that I don't hear. But we hear at the foundation board meetings the stories of the students who have received our scholarships and what that has meant to them and to their families. And these students may be high school students that are coming to college for the first time, and probably our first generation college students. They may be returning from the workforce, from jobs that were dead end or were not fulfilling for them, or they could not support their family, or and they needed a scholarship in order to complete their studies. But more than that, it gives them a feeling of hope, and it gives them a feeling of that others are recognizing their accomplishments and that are investing in their future. So what I see as the foundation's challenge, and all of us as a community as we look at these students, the issue of affordability and the need to increase scholarships is paramount to me. Last year we gave away over $1 million in donor-sponsored scholarships, and 563 students received these funds. In addition, 421 students started Harper as Promise Scholars. And this is really important, and we've changed many lives. But last year, more than 2,400 students applied for the scholarships that we were giving out. That's a lot of students whose needs were not met. And as we look at the more diversity in this area, as we look at more economic insecurity, we know that we need to do better. And so I know that's a challenge that we see. I'm sure that there will be more, but I know that that's one that we're looking at now. And we anticipate that these needs are going to increase. So
thank you.
That's my point of view.
Kathy Millen, a grade, greatest strength, and a challenge, greatest challenge as we develop the strategic plan.
Well, Dr. Cates, 35 years ago, District 211 told me that I have to give everybody a C+ when I started teaching, right? You told me that. I was taught that. That's
I did not tell you
okay.
that.
But somebody from 211.
That's fair. That's fair.
So, and I know great people run this world and they're C+ students, but I'm going to say a B-, okay? And the greatest strength, repeat that, it's the greatest strength we're talking with, right? The greatest strength, still, I feel right now, is I can say right now, and this is, I raised 3 children that all went out of state, still paying for that debt. The greatest strength of Harper is I'm starting to hear high school students and parents saying, this is where my child is going to begin their college career. And I can tell you that was not the conversation 10, 15 years ago. So that's really, really exciting. Parents are saying that their child is going to start here, and they're not convincing their young person of that. They know it's the right thing to do, and it's a smart thing to do. And that I've seen in the last couple of years. So I think right now that is one of Harper's greatest strengths. I'm very excited about that. But the challenge is getting that information out to more parents and more kids, getting them here at an early age, showing them that this campus is where they should begin their career. It's the right thing to do financially. It's the right thing to do because the education that this institute provides is stellar. So it's still getting that information. So 60% of our high school students say, this is where I'll start. This is where I'll start. And I think Harper's on the right path, but there's still some work to do. And again, it's getting that marketing, that messaging early.
Thank you. Steve Scogno.
Well, I certainly hope this doesn't go out too far, because if people start thinking I'm a half full kind of a person rather than half empty, I think I'm going to ruin my reputation that's out there.
We won't tell anyone.
Okay. Actually, from a grade perspective, I would say B+, and I'll tell you why. Organizationally, I've always shared within NCH that the greatest asset I believe a person can have in a leadership role or an organization can have is that of a willingness to do self-reflection. Because if you're not willing to self-reflect, then you're not going to grow, you're not going to challenge yourself to be better. And that's where I think problems begin to occur. So the fact that we're sitting here today really asking the community and challenging ourselves to what is it that we need to do and actually self-reflect, I think is absolutely significant and critical for organizational well-being. So it's that drive and it's that focus that causes me to put forth the B+ as the greatest strength. The biggest challenge, I would have to just go back to access to education because of what we saw with the red dots earlier. It's access to healthcare for me, it's access to education. It really is making sure people have the means and the ability to get what they really need in order to be successful going forward.
Thank you. And finally, Dan Cates.
Well, I'm smarter than I look. My grade is what our schools are graded on, and I'm going to issue a grade of commendable. What happens here, Harper is like your very best uncle, right? Always there when you need somebody, always able to lend a doorway and lend help when you don't know where else to go to get it. Now, sometimes you get to that uncle on a winning streak, and sometimes you get there on some other kind of streak. But that is my experience as a 27-year resident. Harper College is always here. Now, in my experience across the street, people line up to tell me that they want quality, but they want it at a reasonable cost and at high efficiency. I give you my word, I am reminded of that frequently. What you all are able to do here for people who are facing challenges many times is remarkable. And how we go about doing that together, that is our charge. That should be all that drives our strategy for the goal of kids finishing. I read in the materials, if you complete a program here at Harper, you're more likely to earn $500,000 more over the span of a total time. That is what drives us. How is it that that doesn't get us to strive more for the kids to reach the finish line? And I want to double dip a little bit on the previous question. Not only are more kids of economic challenge going to be entering here, but these are going to be students with some diverse backgrounds. And I will tell you that our gap in our kids who were enrolled in our AP classes, 5 years ago, if you were to look in our AP classes, and I gave it our best shot, I did. We moved the needle like this much. And then what happened was the state superintendent happened to come by for a visit, and he saw our programs. He said, Dan, you all are primed. You could benefit from this program. And it was a two-way feedback system between the teachers giving feedback to the kids and the kids talking about their own strengths. And I want to tell you, we dramatically moved the needle in closing our gaps. It is striking. And I would have told you we were doing a good job, and I was wrong. Because we did better. And it was simply from our very top levels. This is the direction that we're going. And we need your help. And we have closed those gaps. And I'm confident you're going to be the fortunate recipients of more of those kids who are now ready to enter your classrooms and your hallways. Those are all the components that we work on.
Thank you. Now I want to give all of you an opportunity to ask questions of our panelists. There's microphones in each aisle. You can come and stand behind them. Or if you've written a question on your card, just hold it up and someone will come around and pick it up. I'll ask that you keep your question to a question. You'll have an opportunity to share more comments later electronically. And if you have a particular panel member that you'd like to address your question to, please do so. All right, Dave, let's start with you.
Good morning, Dave Braunschweig, professor in computer information systems. And I've been thinking about this morning, and I want to get at the demographics on the other end. We've looked at the community, we've looked at the students coming in, and I was thinking about what it is that we produce. And we as an institution are primarily dedicated to transfer students. We're, depending on how you count it, only a third career, maybe only 20% career, somewhere in that range. My question to you is a twofold. Where do you see us going on that balance between transfer and career? And in addressing the career students, where do we draw the line between what would be a credentialed career opportunity and what we do in continuing education? Where do you see these balances as we go forward during this plan?
It's a good question. Just to clarify, everybody wants a career, but the transfer programs prepare students to go on to get a baccalaureate degree before they enter the workplace, whereas what we call our career programs prepare students to go right into the workforce after they complete their associate in applied science degree. Who would like to comment on Dave's question? It's a hard one. Steve Scogna?
I won't like to, but I will.
Okay.
It's getting to be a theme. I think, I'm not sure you have to draw such a hard and fast line. And I think if we do it right, as we've talked about earlier today, we should be able to provide that runway where people can get into a career and continue their education in order to ultimately get to a point where they have a profession where they decide where they really want to be. So it goes back again to that level of uncertainty I was talking about earlier. I'm not sure that everybody has that definitive knowledge as to where they want to be and what they want to be. The fact that you can offer flexibility in that and it doesn't have to be definitive, I think is very important. And for me, I would think it would be important not to basically draw that line and say it has to be A or B, but rather you have the option, to proceed down a path to make a more informed decision after you've gotten into the work world.
Perhaps students are just deciding what they want to do next, not what they want to do for the rest of their lives. That causes too much uncertainty. Mm-hmm. Kathy, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I would like to say that some of those types of programs are in the healthcare industry now. I know that our students will come to Harper and I think it's a year program for the CNA and then a 2-year program, and then they can continue on to get a bachelor's degree, or they continue on from that to get a master's degree. And so that type of program would be able to meet those needs of students that are looking for certificates as well as those that are looking for degrees. And I think we need more programs like that, more programs that are stackable. And maybe you'll need to go back. Maybe if you get, work on some accounting classes, they may not be all the right ones that you might need to eventually transfer to get your degree. But at least you're on that path. You know a little bit about that industry. You've had some work, and maybe then your employer will send you back to school to finish those. And then we do need to work on, I think, at Harper, more of the 1- and 2-year certificate programs for those who really think at this point that they're interested in getting out into the workforce and have some specific skills. And some of those, it could be some in cyber security or aviation, robotics, technology, and we've always talked about health careers. So I think that we need to do both, and I think that Harper needs to keep that balance.
I just want to quickly add that the local partnerships that you all have developed with several companies in particular, we had a career expo, and I was struck by this row of extremely articulate, bright, shining star young people, and they were there because of the partnership that allowed them to be working with the company and attending Harper. It's backfill dollars that are scholarship dollars. If there's a way for some more local companies to offset some of the tuition, to allow some of the clearance for students to have time to go to school, it is an untapped resource. I'm not going to say it's untapped entirely, but it can be much more built up. So I would agree that it is both. We certainly recognize the career pathway mantra. You will hear all of the high school districts recite that. And at the same time, we do know that the quality that people are able to transfer to other schools from here, that is why they are able to go there and to be successful when they depart, because of the quality that has been sustained here. So it is both, and I'll take my both chip and play my both chip right now if I can.
Do you have a thought, Kathy? Or
The only thing I was
We'll
just
move
thinking
on.
is I am an EB 211 mentor, and my young woman was a straight A student at Pelton High School and was going to be a nurse, came in here for the nursing program, but then finances became an issue, so we advised her to get her CNA, and then she's now a phlebotomist, and so she can afford these certificate programs, and she now has a living wage job that she's able to now afford the idea of nursing school, which she thought she could do right after high school. Many kids think they can, and it's difficult for them to afford it. So I so appreciate the affordability of these certificate programs and the way they allow a young person to work and achieve them at the same time, and that's setting them up for a career. And there isn't a career out there that doesn't benefit from that employee having some certificates on that resume as well. So that these are affordable and attainable with good advising on that career path, I think is essential. And I'm seeing that here.
Thank you. And Dave, thank you for introducing yourself before you ask the question. I'll ask everyone to do that. Margie?
Yes, hi, I'm Margie McGowan. I work with Kathy Millen in adult education. And like Kathy, I started at Harper when I was raising kids, went back very part-time in 1989. I was like 10 years old then, but. So Kathy has highlighted many of the concerns that students that we serve have. Number one thing that I notice all the time, a lot of the kids in high school leave because they have to help support their parents. So if you look at dad maybe making $13 an hour and mom's making like $9 an hour, they're trying to support a family of 4 or 5 on, what is that, $22 an hour or something? For a whole family. So there's simply no way they can afford rents in the suburbs and all the things they see and want, just like the rest of us. So the kids leave school to work, and then you have kids who have children at a very young age, and they must work because there's simply not enough money from the parents to support the child as well. So what I'm leaning towards is we have so many stackable certificates that can lead towards an associate's and later a bachelor's. So my question would be, how do you think the stackable career certificates should be marketed to high school students and incoming college students through Promise and other ways?
You'd like to?
Yeah, I'll speak for, so how our high schools learned about the University of Maryland, I don't know. So the representative comes in, they sit down, and then there's an open call, and kids who are interested come in. Through this, what I'm going to call enhanced connection, what I would envision is that we have those people who have gone through those exact degree certification programs come in and be the spokespeople for those degrees and those careers. We have career advisors. All of our schools in all 3 of the high school districts have what we call career advisors. That is right down the center of the fairway for what it is that we're trying to do to help kids learn about careers, but then also the reachable, efficient certification programs that allow them to see a completion, a finish line.
Anyone else?
Marky, I would like to just to add that that Harper makes sure that they are at every junior high open house, and they're at the elementary school teacher conferences, and that table of Harper, that marketing of Harper is out there, and these parents start to see it, and they start to, they're prepared for, so by the time their student hits the high school, they have already understand the language, and they know what it's going to take on their end to support their student. So the more we can get out there, again, with the marketing of Harper and being that person at that table, very knowledgeable and very welcoming, which Harper is and needs to be, so these families can feel like this is something they can participate in.
Okay. Jane?
Hello, my name is Jane Suarez Del Real, and I'm a faculty in the Adult Education Development Department. There's been a lot of talk here this morning about first-generation students, and I just want to make sure we're clear that those are adults and students who are 18 or 17, 18, 19 years old, but our returning adult students are also first generation. My question is geared towards Kathy. I'd like you to describe the role that adult education has in helping adult students and their families make these transitions. To higher education, you talked about the parents and how important it is to help the parents. And if you could just mention about or talk about how the role of adult education and how important that is.
Right. So the role of education, I've been involved in adult ed almost my whole career now, I guess, 31 years. And what adult education will do, will it expose this adult at a very vulnerable age. When they walk into the adult ed education classroom, they've probably had failures. They've dropped out of high school, or they never were able to achieve even going to junior high, whatever country they come from. The role of adult education shows every adult that you have the potential to learn, that learning is ongoing, learning never ends. You learn until you are 90 and you are no longer on this planet, that education has no barriers, that the language that you speak now is a language you can come into this classroom with, and you will learn the language of English. You will learn how to navigate the health system. You'll learn how to navigate the educational systems. You will learn that you have the power within you to achieve these levels. And you may not do this in 6 months. It may take you 6 years, but we are there beside you as adult education teachers, guiding you through this very, very stressful and very sometimes scary experience. They're really the front line. The adult educators are the front line of these students, showing them that they have a path and they can be successful. And we break it down into very small parts and find the appropriate beginning for you, and then knowing where your end is through guidance.
Thank you. We have Dr. Michael Horton, a philosophy professor, who is going to read some of the questions that were written on cards. Michael?
Thank you, Dr. Marwick. So our first question has a related follow-up question, so I'll just sort of give them both. And I believe it's pitched to Dr. Cates, but anyone with expertise can take it. Does pushing students to career pathways take away from the exploration of learning? And the follow-up to that was, to what extent are you encouraging students to take liberal arts or to participate in a liberal arts education?
Sure. So, and that is a common question that we receive. So there is not a hard and fast foreclosure. It is not a limited opportunity window. It is simply courses within our curriculum that allow students to hinge together components that have been developed through, we had many people from industry come in and sit for weeks and months with us saying, these are the kinds of skills, these are the kinds of knowledge pieces, if you will, along with the skills that would go together for a student who was pursuing this career. We are mindful that we don't want to foreclose on anyone. There is no limit. There is, if you don't define a career pathway, you are not, it's not a graduation requirement, but our individualized readiness plan, every student has one, and within that, students do take career interest surveys, if you will, to say what is something that appeals to them. Those pieces of awareness, we think, are strong to counterbalance someone who has no light out there. They can't see any kind of light to walk toward. So we recognize that there are some who think that could be limiting. We don't believe that to be true. In terms of the arts and letters, liberal arts, our students continue to take 4 years of English, of course. The courses within our core areas are extensive. many students now, because of the AP classes, they are in more social studies courses, they are in more English courses. Those have been, we believe, enhanced through more kids seeking more rigor.
Thank you. Another question from the microphone? Jennifer?
Hi, good morning. I'm Jennifer Brennan, Supervisor of the Learning and Career Center in Prospect Heights. So our community is evolving more in its diversity than is currently reflected in Harper's faculty and staff. And there have been some really deliberate attempts to work on that, but I'd really like to know your thoughts. Do you have any thoughts on how we can better recruit, retain, and grow opportunities for people of color and other minorities in our ranks? We want more students, and all of us really, I think, to experience greater representation and keep equity front and center at all levels. I'd love to hear if you have any comments on that.
Who'd like to take a stab at that?
I think one of, so I know I work closely with District 15, and in conversations we've had is how can we keep our very diverse students here? How can we make sure that when they go off to college, or they start here, they go off, they come back and they want to give back to their community? So I believe that the relationships that Harper has collaboratively is very important, but I think if we start in high school and we look at our very diverse populations at our high schools in 211, and we encourage our young people of color, all of our students, to come back and give back to this institution, to be able to come and teach back in 211, to teach in 15, to work in these areas. I think that's something that we can do a better job at. I know we're working on that right now, but I believe we want to see our students come back and give back to this community, and I think there we can start showing them when they're in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade in high school, the potential and how they can give back to their community and find careers in their community and be a part of boards and be a part of nonprofits and be a part of businesses. So it's the internships and it's the encouragement to we've invested a lot in you, and we want to see you come back and be a part of our work here. Does that answer your question?
Definitely from the community perspective, but I'm thinking as much about us as employees of Harper, particularly growing people we have within our ranks and bringing in more people who are reflective of the changing community.
Anybody else? No. Kathy?
I have to apologize because I'm having some trouble hearing the question. I'm getting some feedback. My ears are all plugged up from my, whatever.
The question was about recruiting diverse students to our college and how we as employees.
No, I'm talking about employees at all levels who might see our students or change our course,
Okay, diverse. Okay. Michael? Do you want to?
Sure, yes. How do you encourage students to go into the careers that have a great need, for example, CNA, manufacturing, CNC, HVAC, et cetera?
The opportunities that we have in our summer school programs have been an area that we've been fleshing out, if you will. There was once a time when students were taking, if you all have students who've gone to 211 or other local high schools, they would crank out their requirements in the summer, and we've tried to meld our health class that they've now distilled down into 13. So we've spread that out over 4 years of high school in a more larger wellness. What that did was it freed up summertime for these career exploration, their survey courses, frankly, where students can learn about 4 different components of IT skills, where they can learn about 4 different components of arts and graphics. And those have been the areas by which we've been able to capture more kids' interest in the applied tech arenas. Certainly the different career pathways, they all have their proponents, but our summer programs for the kids who aren't certain, that's really been the avenue where we've been trying to give them the taste of a different field, if you will, in these different survey sampling courses.
So that really speaks to the high school students because people don't know what their choices are. What do I need to do to get what kind of job? What about our adults?
I think the more, when I think of my children and myself, I chose the career I did because I came from a family of teachers and nurses. So that just was almost natural that that's the career path that I was gravitated to follow. But I feel that our young people today and our adults, especially if they're not exposed to these careers growing up, if they don't have an aunt or an uncle or a neighbor or a cousin or somebody that was a welder or a CNA or whatever it may be, they don't really know what that career means. So I think to bring people from these careers out as mentors, helping high school students with homework, junior high kids with homework, meeting with our adult students, the most powerful thing you can do is bring in a welder to a classroom of adult learners and say, this is what I do, this is how I started, this is what I make, this is what I could make. We have to bring that to in our adult classes. The more we can tap into these industries of which there's great potential of growth and money, many of this in manufacturing, I think that the voice sitting next to someone is the most powerful. Reading about it maybe doesn't seem interesting. Seeing that that's what you do and you are successful and it brings you joy and passion, that's a selling point.
Thanks.
I know that
Kathy.
Harper has the Career Expos
Yes.
and I believe is it for junior high school students? Is that correct? Or-
Well, we have the Career Expo that's for the 4th through 8th graders and their families, and then we have it also for older adult students to bring them back in.
Yeah, so I think that perhaps the type of thing, the Career Expos, to give people that are looking for a change of career, a place where they can come to hear about many different opportunities to see which one might fit to them, and perhaps that type of program needs to be expanded.
Okay, good. From the microphone.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anna Luna. I am an academic advisor. Some background that might be interesting to our panelists is I was an Excel student at Hoffman Estates High School, so now I'm back here as an academic advisor. So I thought that would be cool for you to know.
Very cool.
My
It is.
question is, speaking from the background of a community member and now an employee of Harper, what would you all describe as the barriers or challenges that keep our first-time or generation students and their families from coming on campus and feeling comfortable in approaching us as an institution? Because I hear about the marketing, I hear about the flyers, I hear about the outreach, but like that's already happening and it has been happening, but our community members, especially our community members that are not native English speakers to begin with, don't feel comfortable approaching us as an institution. We can be intimidating because our buildings are fancy and they're really nice, and they're like, I'm not sure where my place or my space is on the campus. So as the folks interacting with the community members, what can we do as an institution to be more accessible and more welcoming?
There's an element of dialogue that I think not only hits with this, but with other questions that are being asked, which is we're placing the responsibility completely on Harper. And I think this is where the community also has to step up and the employers have to step up to assist with that process. I think the more that the public understands that there's a cohesiveness with Harper, with the educational foundations that we have, that will provide a level of incentive for people, because if there's an employment opportunity that goes along with that learning opportunity, perhaps that's where we need to go. Perhaps we have to have that level of incentive where it's not only just an educational component, but especially for first-time folks who are trying to have a living wage, people that want to have a foundation. The employers have got to also step up. They have to step up to be kind of arm in arm with Harper. They have to be arm in arm with our community members to reach out and to help them. And, you know, we've begun to scratch the surface a little bit with this. There's more that we can do as an organization. But I really think the employers have got to also understand, and I think the community has to push for our employers to be more proactive in being a partner with Harper and with our educational foundation, because it really is and can serve as a greater incentive. So you're right, you can market all you want, you can put flyers out, but if you begin to establish an incentive where somebody can say, gosh, it's worth me taking that step because there's something more than just an advertisement there. I think that might be one direction, so perhaps we could strive to get greater participation with other employers to, to try and drive this train a little bit.
Dan?
Sure, and we're always glad to have any District 211 representative, and congratulations. It only is your success shines brightly on everybody. What I would add to that is that one of the best components that I implemented when I became superintendent was what I call a parent communications group. These are people that I bring together to tell us what can we do better with our communications. This is a day and age where everyone wants all the information right now. And I met with them last night, and they continue to have ideas. We had some things so goofy on our website. We had some things in some of our communications that were not helpful. And what I would offer is, and I would be sure that the other superintendents for the high schools would offer this as well. How we would be willing to have a core group of parents say, this is what it's like when we go to have a first contact with Harper. We would do that with Spanish speakers. We would do that with any of our groups that are first timers. That is the best way that we learn. We can sit in our offices and if there's anything that I can just nag at my people about is put the keyboard down. Get out of the office. Bring a human contact into it for their experience. That is the sequence. So if we were to have our people sit with your people to say, here's what it's like for us from the first moment, we would flush out things far more efficiently. That has been my experience.
Thank you. Those are two good suggestions. Michael, do you have one last quick question?
I don't know if it's quick, but I have one more question. So as higher educational institutions sell themselves often in terms of time, so 2 to 3 years for an associate's, 4+ years for a BA, MA, they put question marks. Wouldn't it be beneficial to sell higher education as part of lifelong learning? Would some sort of marketing strategy like that be beneficial? So you get a bonus degree certificate. So not just as a terminal degree, I think, as part of a bigger lifelong learning process.
So lifelong learning is what we want for everyone. Right. How do we sell that at the same time selling the importance of your first credential, perhaps your second credential, and so forth? That's a stumper. Yeah. Steve?
Yeah, I'm going to go back. I think, again, you have to make it accessible from a financial perspective, and probably in order to be successful, you have to get the employers included. I think it's very difficult for just the educational institution alone to be able to drive that kind of desire. So I do think further partnerships that can provide different levels of incentive, are going to be very, very important to broaden the overall horizons for our community members that want that, and they have to see a benefit. So many times people really, they correlate education with a degree, and I think an important element is that education is much more than a degree, right? Education is really learning more about life, and the best way to to expose yourself to that is to variety and, being open, again, from a self-reflection perspective as to how can I be a better human being and a more complete human being. And we have to allow that, but we also have to make sure that there's others in the community beyond Harper that can really, sort of drive that ambition. And so I think employers have really got to step up to the plate. As you can probably tell, I certainly have a bent that I think, employers in general haven't emphasized education and ongoing education enough. And I understand that it's a difficult process, but I think it's something that really, really could make our communities much better.
And I think this is a fundamental issue as well. And I think it's a cultural issue, especially when we are dealing with so many different backgrounds and so many concepts of education. And I think we need to be aware that that we don't look at high school graduation as a capstone, but a milestone in one's educational experience, and that it doesn't stop there. But so often, you think back, 100 years ago, at maybe grade school or junior high school was the end. It was where people had their sights set. And then it's a high school degree, and then maybe a college degree for some people. But again, we have to work with our families, we have to work with all sorts of different expectations to change that mindset so that they understand that high school graduation is just one marker, and then you continue on. And I think we need to think about that even when the children are in grade school.
Dan?
This is a tangential shot, if I can offer. One of the dynamics that we see is that immigrant families often come to us having been professionals, college-degreed, highly achieved professionals from the country that they left. And when they get to us, they don't have any recognition when they get to the northwest suburbs. Their degree doesn't. And so we frequently hire them as teacher assistants or in some other regard. And I do think, and I did speak to the other two superintendents about this, we do think there are potentials for looking at what are the ways that Harper could pursue or advertise capturing these immigrants to, who have background training. Is there a way that can shape itself into a recognition or a, if I could use the phrase, cashable, recognition of their past training and their past degrees, so that they can pursue something beyond, one of the roles that I've described in our system.
Thank you. This morning we've talked about the changing landscape of our community, and we've been so fortunate to have these four community members as panelists to come here and share their thoughts about Harper College, our challenges, and our direction for the next strategic plan. Please join me in thanking them. As you reflect on our conversation this morning and on Harper's direction for the next strategic plan, we invite you to take this survey that will be coming out to all of you and to leave additional feedback. Thank you for taking the time this morning to come and think about Harper's strategic plan. Thank you, Judy.